Hi, this is Nancy with On Point TV and Quilting with Nancy. And I was going to let that fireworks slide go a little longer, but I remembered that we didn't fix the music for that. And which is kind of funny because if everything goes right and if somebody will start telling me if you can hear me, this will be the first time I set the whole thing up all by myself and didn't have Bill come down and I didn't have Athena at my side and stuff. So if this works, so I'm just waiting for somebody to say that they're there and you can hear me. Somebody please say you're there and you can hear me so I can say, good job, Nancy. You actually did it all by yourself. Anybody? Anybody? I don't know. I think I can hear myself upstairs with Bill, so I'm going to say it's good to go. I set it up all myself. Thank you, Keith Trevor Rolfsema, my son, who is an audio video master, and he sets this kind of stuff up for lots of people all the time, mainly churches and stuff like that. And he's got, for Christmas, he set me all up, but I've been afraid, and then I was away for so long, and now I'm back, and it's the third time, and except for the music at the slideshow, everything worked. So I'm pretty excited. So happy 4th of July. Yep, it's just a couple days away for me. And this is the quilt that we're going to make. And I, because I have such a creative way with words, I'm calling it Happy 4th. If I don't get Gina to help me with my words, pretty much everything is straightforward. It's what you see is what you get with me. Words, yeah, I can say them, but I can't come up with the really creative things like naming quilts and naming patterns. It's just not in my repertoire. So this is a quilt that the members of our, you know what, I forgot to turn off the dehumidifier, so I'm not sure if you can hear that or not. So let's just keep going on. So last week, thank you very much, Not My Name, who is a member. You can tell by the little 9 patch in her, by next to her name there. So at our EQ session last Thursday, one of the members had asked for a quilt that the borders were kind of built into it. And honestly, I failed on that question. I could not quite figure out, I think, what she was looking for. But I'd seen a picture of something like this, and I thought, this kind of works, that it's all custom sets and there's no real border option to it. And in the process of preparing myself to train that. So if you're interested in learning how to design this quilt, become a member of the designer level membership on my channel because they help me design it. And I say they help me because I can't tell you how many times I'll think I have it all going on and I got, and this is how you do that. And somebody will go, how about you use the rotate button, Nancy? And then I go, all right, I need you guys. I need you. And together we make some really great designs. So this is the design that we made. So hello, Northern Alberta. I got a phone call from Alberta. I think Wonderful is up there. Or no, Vancouver. It's in Canada. And Missouri, and hi from Stockbridge. Okay, so now I know. You didn't tell me where you were going or if you were going with us, but Athena's at home right now, so she's not riding home with us. And hello, Southeast Florida. Thank you all for being here. So this is the quilt that we're going to make today. I'm just going to show you a little bit of tips and tricks. Some of it's kind of basic. Rail fence, you should have that by now. If not, I have a whole couple of videos on making a rail fence. We've never made a 16 patch, so we're going to make a 16 patch. And some other techniques that we've done in some of the other quilts, but I'll show you some little tricks and stuff. Hello, hi Marie from Lansing. Hope you're doing good. And Marie is actually part of that group that helps me design these quilts. So this is the quilt. All right. Now, what I love about it, I love that it's on point, but it's not on point. So that was a little bit different. It's almost like a double on point, like a double negative or something. So it starts on point with the setting of the stars, setting triangles, corner triangles, and then it becomes just one square. And then these blocks are on point around the main center that is no longer on point. So I love that aspect of it. And of course it has, the red, white, and blue aspects to it. And honestly, the techniques are kind of simple, but there is a pattern. This is the pattern. Yes, there's my very creative name. It has changed a little bit. Teresa has done a little bit of things for me so that it doesn't look like handwritten all over the place. There is a minor change I want to make. So for the Addict members, it kind of went out of blur there for a second. Let's not let that happen again. I already sent this to Addict members. So again, I am going to make a plea. There are 2 Addict members, one that just joined recently, and I don't have your email. Another that I swear joined 18 months ago, and I've never had your email. So if you are an Addict member and you're not getting perks, please let me know, especially the person that just, Barb is your first name and that's all I know. So if you could, Barb, send me your email so I can send you the pattern. For the rest of you, the pattern is available on the website, www.onpoint-tv.com. That's where you can find all of my books and patterns, including the kits and patterns for my fabulous pincushion. All right. So this is what we're going to work on today. I'm going to just take you through a few of the techniques. And in doing it, I want you to know that I am going to be working on the miniature quilt version. Hello, Jennifer, just for you. So Jennifer is one of our members that likes to do mini quilts. I don't do them very often. So this star is a 3-inch finished star. This is a 6-inch finished star. So we're going to first start the technique of quarter square triangles. Then we will get into the flying geese. And I'll try and come up, a few things that I do when I'm working in miniatures. Having said that, I am not a miniature expert. My sister Renee loves making miniature quilts. Jennifer obviously likes. So lots of people really love that. And I don't even know if I would consider this being... Let's see, how big is this? Let me grab a ruler. I don't know how big it is. But even just the center is 11 or so inches. Honestly, there are some people that make entire miniature quilts with like all the bells and whistles on it that finish up to 12 inches. Yeah, that's just not going to be me. So let's start with the quarter square triangle. Hello, Texas. All right, so let's move this out of the way. We're going to start with quarter square triangles. Now, we have done quarter square triangles before, but let me just take you through the process again for those of you that have not been watching for a very, very long time. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 4 colors that are in our quarter square triangle. There is a light blue, and I'm going to use this one for the demo. There's a gray, and I'm going to use this one. Oops, let's flip that over so it looks a little grayer. All right, and then 2 of the blues. And with this style of quarter square triangle, where there are 4 squares, there is no reverse image. And what I mean is that there's some quarter square triangle techniques, depending on if you're like doing 4 colors or stuff like, or split quarter square triangles, where you will have a mirror image, split quarter square triangle. This is not the case. In this case, they're all going to turn out just like this. So step 1 is to draw a diagonal line. Now, one thing I do think about when I'm doing these miniatures is you have to be at your, I think anyway, and maybe somebody will dispute me, and if you are a miniature quilt lover, if you love making miniature quilts, why don't you share with us your favorite technique or the thing that makes miniature quilts really work well for you, because like I said, I don't do them very often. All right, so first thing we're going to do is draw the lines. My point of talking about precision is that I find with the miniature, the smaller the quilt, the more precise you have to be. All right, so we're going to take this over to the sewing machine now, and we're going to do some sewing, and I'm going to try and do some piecing over there for you too. So there is my sewing machine setup. Hoping y'all can see that well. It's kind of hard for me to sew over here because I have to turn down the lights so much so that it doesn't blind you. But here we are. I've got my leader in place. I've got my seam guide right here that we will be using when we're doing the scant 1/4 inch seam. And I have moved my needle over 1 bop closer than I normally do. On this machine, I normally go about a 2.5. I'm going to 2.8, so it's a little bit closer. Let me go a little bit this way. Move that out there. All right. So a little bit closer, and I'm starting with the seam along my leader. Sorry, that was an odd thought. And my stitch length I have taken down to 2.0. Normally on my FAF Performance icon, a 2.5 is what comes up. I have taken it down to a 2.0. And I've also taken down the speed. My pedal is to the metal right now. When I'm working on precise things, I want to run my machine a little bit slower. So running it a little bit slower is just going to mean that even though it is really tiny, I'm going to try and do my very most precise piecing. And I find with miniatures, honestly, I can screw up so easily if you don't work more precise than normal. Cut these little girls apart. Now I'm going to sew on the other side. The other thing that I have done is I always piece with a 50 weight cotton thread. So I have that in my machine. And I always piece with a 70 Microtex needle. Microtex is it's a needle that means it's really, really sharp. It is not, I get mine are mostly Schmetz needles. I don't think it's a brand name for Schmetz, but those are the kinds that I always use. But a 70 Microtex. Never, ever, 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 ever do I piece with a universal needle. It's not sharp enough. And especially for something like this, I want something that's going to be very, very sharp. Now, off camera, I am going to press these. And I always press them first before I cut them. So now I'm going to cut them in half. Some people like to do this with their rotary cutter. I typically just like to do this like this. So I'm surprised that I haven't gotten anybody to say that they like to do miniatures and what they do to make it different. Because I think there's a lot of different things you can do with miniature quilts that are going to make it easier to the process. And now I'm going to take this to the ironing board. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm just going to tell you about it. I want to take and press these so that they will all be pressed to the dark blue. And I've got one already prepared. And with this pressed to the dark blue on the bottom, and on the top, that's going to butt together right there in the middle. Then I used my white chalk pencil and I drew a line right down the middle. Okay, so now I'm going to finish this up. And with quarter square triangles, I typically am going to give you a cutting instruction that is a little bit bigger than what you actually need, so that there's a little bit that you can trim off without wasting a ton of fabric, which if you've ever done any of my patterns, my half square triangles, those kinds of things, I almost always am going to do that. Going to give you a little bit extra. Although with the setting triangles on this particular quilt, that was not so easy. It made it a little bit more difficult with the setting triangles, which I'll try to explain when I get to that, because I thought it was kind of odd. All right, going to cut that apart. I'm going to press this flat, cut it apart, and I will meet you at the other camera. Okay, press first. I always press first before I do the cutting. So here it is. Now I'm going to cut right down the middle again. Yes, you could use your rotary cutter if you really wanted to right there. Now, for the quarter square triangle, and pretty much any block I make that has 4 different blocks, I am now going to seam separate. Now, this is how it happens. So you see how the seam is together. I don't know how this is going to work. I did this with big fabric once on the Sunset over Dublin, so hopefully you can see this. Now, I'm going to press this on the left down. I'm going to take the one on the right, and I'm separating those stitches right there in the middle. And that is called seam separating. At least that's what I call it. I think that's what it's called in real life. So this is my Clover mini iron set on high. It is not going to hurt my cutting mat for the little bit of time that it is on here. Oh, you know what I did forget? And this I think is a great tip for all the time, all quilt making. You hear me talk about it all the time, is to use some spray sizing on all of your fabrics, because then everything, especially, now this is a point of order, especially with miniatures. Now, people always tell me all the time that they pre-wash their fabric, that they pre-wash and pre-dry their fabric because they don't want it to shrink or they don't want it to bleed. Well, the bleeding, that's not going to help it. So for instance, on this piece, let me see it if I can see it from the overhead. Do you see that blob right there? This piece has been bleeding since day one. I actually did try to wash it, and guess what? It still bleeds. You know how you can test? And I'm going to do this with spray sizing, but you can do it with water. Spray it, get it wet, put it on something white, and rub on it. Bleed. If it bleeds once, it'll bleed 1,000 times unless you decide that you want to do what the manufacturer failed to do in this particular case. And you know what? It's not always the quality of the fabric. This is a high quality fabric. I don't buy cheap fabric, but sometimes, oftentimes in reds, this is going to happen. So you need to be responsible for knowing what the tools you're using are going to work with. So if you're going to choose to use a red, then you might want to know whether or not it is going to bleed. Wash it, maybe wash it with Retain. Retain is an additive that people that do hand dyeing wash their fabrics in so that it'll hold the dye. Manufacturers do that. I don't know why. Sometimes in red, maybe they need to do it twice, something like that. Yes, Sarah says that she likes to do miniatures with paper piecing, and that is a really good idea. And I've got a Christmas wreath that's only 24 inches done paper piecing. That worked great, making it that small with paper piecing, and you can do some super tiny ones. These particular blocks, except the rail fence actually would work really nicely for that. But if you decided to do like the star here with paper piecing, you'd have to do this unit, this unit, and this unit. So it's kind of like you have to do them individually. Not that it's not possible, but that is one trick, thank you very much, Sarah, that I hear a lot. Paper piecing and with miniatures really go together very, very nicely. All right, so I have spray sized it. Now, the other reason why I want to spray size it, not only to make it a little bit stiffer, but with miniatures, let's say the fabric is going to shrink 5%. All right. So if you have a yard of fabric and it shrinks 5%, watch really carefully. It's going to shrink that much. Did you see it? Yep. It's such a tiny bit that it's just not as noticeable. So when you're doing things with normal size, I spray size ahead of time anyhow, oftentimes. But generally speaking, you just don't notice that little bit. But when the piece is only this big, 5% of that seems like an awful lot. So by spray sizing it first, I'm also pre-shrinking it so that with this miniature kind of thing, I'm not having something like shrink so much that I'm not going to be able to use it. Arizona, thank you very much, Helen. I'm glad you like the quilt. All right, so with this, I've already spray sized it, and because I've already spray sized it, using my little Clover mini iron is going to have everything stay right in place. I mean, it really works well. It's almost like pre-sizing makes it so it'll stay flat for you. Then I am going to use my little OmniGrid 2.5-inch ruler. Now, I have a grippy stuff on the back. It's called Grip No Slip, and I'm pretty sure you can find that at Fireside Quilts. It is a sticky, kind of gritty substance that when you really don't want your ruler to move, it won't. So I don't put it on all of my rulers because oftentimes I want them to move, especially if I'm doing power cutting. But in this case, I don't want it to move. So I'm going to set it on top there. I've lined it up. I need to trim this to 2.5 inches. Just spin that around. This is the little OmniGrid spinning mat that I use all the time. Love this little guy. All right, let's scooch that out of the way, and then let's do this last one, so we'll have 4. Because I want to show you a really cool little way to piece an entire block that I learned. So I'm seam separating. When your stitch length is a little bit smaller, like I told you I've done with this, it can make it a little bit more difficult to get that seam separating to actually happen. All right, there we go. Come from the front side, make sure everything is pressed out correctly. And my little cutter, lining up that diagonal line, trying to get the corners to actually be on the seam there. All right. So this quilt, my intention with this quilt, our family is having a 4th of July / happy 89th birthday for my dad. And I'm hoping to get this done so I can have everybody sign it and we can present it to him. All right, so now I'm going to take, let's get this. This should work. Get this out of the way. And I'm going to build my block, okay? It's going to start with a red in the middle. Then it's going to go with these 1/4 square triangles and 4 corners. I'm pretty sure I cut these corners the right size, did I? Actually, I didn't. They're a little big. So hold on one second. Let me cut these down a sec. Oh, I think these ones were cut. No? Let's double check. I'd rather have them cut right than sit over there and go, why did this not work? All right, let's try this with this little ruler. Yeah, it wasn't. It's cut a little bit big. And I think I know why, too, for something else I was doing. Okay. There. So these should all be the 2.5 that I need. And, of course, all that information is on the pattern if you are so interested. So there you go. That's what my block is going to look like. We're going to go now to the sewing machine. I'm going to show you a little tricky way that I piece blocks that are sampler blocks. And I learned this years and years and years ago from the lady that I've been saying this for so long, Sharon Craig. She was my favorite quilt teacher. She taught me this, and I just think it's the coolest technique ever. So I'm going to take these first 2 pieces. I'm going to flip them over, and I'm not positive what everybody can see, so I'm hoping you can see this. And I'm going to sew on this seam, all right? So nothing magical there, all right? Use my awl or seam ripper. Let me flip that over. This is one of those awls that Gina makes me, although we don't have any available on the website right now. Then I'm going to reach over to the second row, and I'm going to flip this one, the right piece, the second column piece, onto the left column piece, line them up, and sew. Now when I sew, I'm only going to make just a couple. The needle is off the first fabric. I'm going to push in the second fabric so that there's a stitch between them. Now I'm going to reach over to this side, flip this one over, always flipping the right side to the left side. Now, I don't always do this. It kind of depends on the style of block that I'm doing. And so when I'm doing a pieced block, especially if I'm doing a lot of them, I really like this. It kind of keeps me everything together. Like it makes it so my pieces and parts don't get lost. Now, I'm going to cut apart my leader, but I'm not, no, don't cut apart these pieces. I am going to finger press them though. So this one, the red one goes to the middle, and that's because it's point of least resistance. Going to flip him over so that I can finger press this one to the corner square. Flip this one over for the same thing. Whoops. And again, because I have spray sized these already, they kind of, look at how they sit there so nicely, right? Now bring this back into the plan. Now we're back to where we were, so this is where you can check your design, make sure everything is where it needs to be. And again, I'm going to flip the right-hand side over onto this piece. And now I'm going to pick up all of them, all 3 of them. Okay. Line this up. Feed this through. I am running with my machine kind of slow, which I kind of like. Now I'm going to pick the one up off the table here. This is where it belongs. Going to flip this over. Line that little guy up. And I did do this with this quilt and all of the blocks that are on this quilt. So here's the next one. So this can be, honestly, for me, it's a little bit like a puzzle, because if a block is like a 5x5 block, it can be a challenge. When it's a 3x3 like this one, oops, my foot pedal's sliding away from me. It's really quite simple. All right, let's cut that off. Now we're going to finger press again. Flip this one out. Just scratch it over the side. Get this one and get that seam to go underneath the red. Set. And the last one. And let's cut off this leader. All right. So now you can see that the block is actually still connected. So hang in there. It's still connected. So this means that all I have to do is flip this over. Those little seams are going to be butt together already. Now, when this does not work is when you're working with things where there's not an obvious pressing solution. Sometimes, you know, some blocks don't have quite as obvious of a pressing solution. This one, I think the pressing solution kind of makes perfect sense. That whole press to the point of least resistance is pretty much screaming with this block, that this is definitely the point of least resistance. But it's not always the case. All right, so let's get that. Oops, cut this little guy off. And I do normally try to chain piece, you know, more blocks at a time too. Hello, Pearl. How you been doing? Haven't heard from you in a bit. All right, so I'm just going to finger press that, keep it out of the way. Flip this one over. It's already set. I don't even have to pin. Now, there are some times that things don't go together as smoothly as I want when a block is more complicated. And then I will actually pull out my pins also along with this technique. But most of the time, you don't even have to do any pinning. Okay. And here. All right. And that is that. I mean, seriously. Look at those intersections. All right, pretty darn good if I say so myself. All right, I'm going to press these real quickly here with the big iron, and then I'll meet you at the other table. Press, 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 press. Someday we'll set up 4 cameras, and I can have a pressing station, a machine station, a front station, and all of those. So let me show you what this looks like on the overhead. So the block looks really, really nice. The back, I have pressed these out because there really isn't, you know, these want to go out. I wouldn't want to press them in because then these go in. So I like that pressing solution. When you're done with that, you can trim the edges. Now this block is supposed to be 6.5 inches. He's only a smidge bigger, so I don't think I'm going to trim him at all. What you can't do is square them up. If you try squaring them up, oftentimes that means you end up cutting off points. So I might, what I mean by trimming is lining the 1/4 inch of my ruler. You can see that there's the 1/4 inch, and putting it on the point, and then I could trim. Well, there's really nothing to trim in this case, so I'm just going to leave the block just like it is. The next block is these little guys, the variable star. Watching on TV now. Oh, well, that's very nice. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to now do this one this one that that EQ calls the variable star. The first one's the Ohio star. And this is the idea of this. Now I'm going to just cheat on the first part. The first thing you're going to do, there we go, is you're going to take your star points. For this, you need 1 large square and 4 small squares. So here's my little 4 ones. This is the flying geese, no waste fabric method, all right? So the first thing you're going to do is take on your little squares and you're going to draw a diagonal line. Then you are going to place them like this on the large square where they actually overlap in the middle. See how they're overlapping? And then you're going to go to your sewing machine and do basically what we just did. Sew that scant 1/4 inch on either side. And I know this looks weird, and if you've never done it before, you might almost think that I'm doing magic, okay? So we're going to start with that. Then you're going to press those, and you'll end up with 2 that you'll press where you press that up. So this is the little square. So this was this guy sewed together. You cut down the middle. Now you press those out. Now you're going to take your remaining 2 squares and you're going to put them on like that. And then sew that scant 1/4 inch, being sure you're really true with your scant 1/4 inch on either side. And when you're done, you'll cut down the middle again. So you're going to have a flying goose. He's going to look like that. So you will have the 4 flying geese needed for this little block. All right. So in this case, this was my boo-boo block. There's everybody has a boo-boo block. I put the gray and then I put the white on here, and it's supposed to be white for these center ones and then gray on the outside, which I'll be showing you here in a moment. But the pressing solution on this block, I think honestly is the most important thing for us to talk about. Kind of looks basic, right? Flying goose, squares, square, flying geese, that kind of thing. But look at my pressing solution. And I'm not positive what you all can really see. But when I first did the pressing on these, I pressed like the flying geese sections out to the squares. That makes sense. So that these parts are not stacked on top of another. Well, I want that for these sections too. So this is the row that went together. And when I press this row, I want the star points to go out, but I don't want the center of the block to go out. My friend Laura noticed me doing this at a retreat the other day, and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, all right, I cheat press like this, I flip press like this all the time, but I don't always tell you what I'm doing. I just kind of do it on the sly. I want the center pressed toward the center, and I want these pressed to the outside. So right here, there is a flip in the seam. And if you're using spray sizing to flatten all of your blocks, then you will have a very, very flat block in the end. Hello, Northern Minnesota, and hello, Dagmeyer. I love your little smiley guy. I'm waving at you. Hello, Dagmeyer. My cousin's getting married in Germany. She is marrying a man in Berlin, and no, my cousin's daughter is marrying a man in Berlin. They're all going to the wedding, and we didn't get to go. So that's the little tidbit I want to tell you about on the Flying Goose block. All right. Then you go into, so here's our main block. Let's get that out of the way. From that, you're going to put on your setting squares and triangles. All right. Now, the one thing I want to show you with that is with the setting squares and triangles is that you want to trim these edges. I've had you cut these a little bigger than they needed to be. So now it's time to trim them. So I'm going to turn this mat. Okay. I'm going to do just like I was showing you with that block, lining the 1/4 inch of my ruler up on, let me see, which one can you see? All right, the 1/4 inch of the ruler on the point of the block. One here, one there. When I get up to the center one, I slide the ruler forward, again looking at my starting and my points on the blocks. There. Now this edge is the 1/4 inch away from the edge, okay? Oh, you love this. Thank you very much, Barb. Are you the Barb whose email I don't have because you just became a member? Oops, let's slide this down so you can actually maybe see the rest of it, huh? And take that up, stop there, slide it up, matching the bottom. So get this one trimmed. If you get this one trimmed, the other ones you can trim a little bit, but you don't really have to trim that much. I could not make them that much bigger like I normally do. Because of the actual way the quilt goes together. There. All right. Now, isn't that a beauty? I think that would just be a really great block for just about any quilt at all. All right. So one thing I want to talk to you about with this, when these little guys went together, right there, remember how I told you that I pressed all of these out? Well, when these were going together, one of them I did have to press in so that I could get that seam to butt together. So I did on just one side of 4 of them. I pressed them so they would go in so that they would be able to butt up. So that was this one. They would be able to butt up to the one here that was going out to make that a little bit more precise. All right. Oh, sorry, Barb. Hello, Ontario. All right. So now we're going to start putting together the rest of the blocks. Now, what I did is I designed it in a way so that when you were putting the block together, there were different units that you were going to create to put all of these together, because it's not like you can make them all, I don't know, it'll make sense when you're actually working on it. So for instance, these are the corner units using the rail fence, the stars, a corner triangle, and setting triangles. These will end up going here. I'm going to put it, let's go here so you can kind of see them. Hopefully this will all work out because I zoomed in the camera quite a bit so that we could show you more. Right? But you're going to make individual units like this individual unit where pieces go together, which then goes with this individual unit. And then this one there, and then that goes there. All right. So it will make sense when you're doing it, but just know that there's these making of these individual units. So this is the first side. I didn't piece these together, but I want to show you what the second side, and what I mean by first and second side is this is the first side. All right. So you're going to get the center done, and then you're going to piece those individual units so that the individual unit will be kind of, sort of like this. Okay, this is one of the side or the top and bottom unit here. All right, so this one has 3 separate units to it. There is this unit, which I don't remember. This must be the B unit. This one is the A unit, and then this is the C unit. So that all goes together to create the top and bottom border. So after I get this unit done, 2 of these done, and the 2 sides done, so that'll be here. I know this looks really, really confusing. Oops, where'd my other parts go? And then this one will be, gotta find it. There it is. A corner triangle here, so that will match on that end. Let me scooch this down a little bit. There, all right. This little one goes here, and then this little guy goes down. This little guy has the other corner triangle. He's going to go there. And after you have this part on and this part on, then you can put on your corner unit. So it was very fun to make, but that particular part of it, if you think it ends up being difficult to make, just think about how I was having trouble when I was writing the pattern, okay? So what I did in the pattern is I kind of divided it up as to how I thought you needed to construct it, and then I was like, make 2 of these, make 2 of these, so, you know, using all the little individual units, make 4 of those, and then you'll see how it kind of all goes together. So it was really very fun to make. I really did enjoy it very much. Yeah, you're right. It would look really beautiful for any 4th of July thing. It also would be for those of you that are doing Quilts of Valor. I think it'd be a really great Quilts of Valor. I do want to do some different colorings on it. Honestly, I didn't have time. I mean, I just designed it on Thursday and got pretty much 2 quilts done today. So I think it'd be really pretty in some different colorways too. There's just so many different ways that I think that you can make this. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Pearl, and thank you, Dagmire, and thank you, Debbie and Tom. Any questions? So I'm going to give you just a couple of seconds here to think about if there's any questions. I hope you all have a wonderful 4th of July. Those that are here in the United States, if you happen to be an American abroad, I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July. And I hope that the day of the 4th of July is really wonderful for everybody all over the world, whether or not you're having fireworks or not. All right, so I don't see any questions. You know that if you have any questions, you can always email them to me at quiltingwithnancy@gmail.com. If you'd like to be a member, the people that are helping me design these kinds of quilts and those people that are getting the patterns sent to them as an e-pattern before the video even goes on, take a look at the join button below. That's where you'll get some more information like that. And I don't think that I put the link to the pattern in the description below, but I will get to that tomorrow. Okay, so without any further ado, thank you all very much for joining. I really appreciate it. Have a great evening.